What's going on, boys? Welcome back to the channel. Today's Tuesday, so we're gonna be doing a How to Tuesday. For today's occasion, we're here in the 90-degree heat in East LA at the Belvedere skate park. And I thought it'd be perfect because it'd be an empty skate park and I could show you guys 5 easy tricks for beginners. The first of which is kind of like implied in this whole thing. It's really hot, so there's not gonna be very many people at the skate park, so we're not gonna be in the way. So the very first thing we're gonna learn today is proper park etiquette. Let's hop into the skate park and I'll show you what I mean. So you can see the whole skate park is virtually empty. One BMX dude floating around, but not too many people to get in the way. So, what's up, man? How you doing? Sure. Rule number 1, be courteous. Always say hello. I feel like there's so many people who come to the skate park and they don't even acknowledge the fact that you're there. Just say what's up. Nod your head, little one of these guys, anything. That should be rule number 1. Rule number 2, just kind of like observe what's going on. If you see that there's no one at all at the skate park, then it's kind of your free reign. But if you see anybody having a session, try and like be mindful and kind of avoid their area. Also, if you see someone trying a trick that you might be good at, don't go and do the same trick in front of them. I mean, I guess some people are trying to session with you, but if you're trying to do that, then probably ask them like, hey, do you mind if I try this with you? Or hey, here's some pointers. Keep that in mind, just some proper etiquette. All right, so the second thing you wanna learn, which would be the very first trick you're gonna wanna learn, is dropping or rolling in. Now you have a couple options. At this skate park, I found one that kind of gives you a mix of both. As you can see over there, we got an embankment or a wedge, as we like to call it. And then right in the corner, it has like a little corner pocket. And then right here, it turns into a transition. So we got a quarter pipe. We got coping here. And as you see and you go down, the coping kind of magically disappears. And you got this roller edge. Then you got the pocket or corner. And then, like I said, you got the flat embankment or wedge. That is gonna be your easiest bet to drop in, followed by probably the corner, followed by then, as it gets a little steeper and becomes more of a quarter pipe, and then finally the one with the coping. Now, how do we accomplish this? There's 2 options for the wedges or kind of embankments. Is you can either go straight into it or diagonally or sideways. If you're going straight into it, it's a little scarier, but it's a little easier. And if you're going diagonally, it kind of takes away the fear, but it's also, you're more likely to slip out if you are a little hesitant. Key thing to all of this is just having confidence. Just see yourself doing it and then just get it done. All right, I guess I can show you guys what it looks like. Nothing really too complex. Number 1 thing to remember is, again, confidence. Number 2, make sure your feet are actually level. Some people are cranking or doing weird things with their feet. Just make sure they're parallel. All that means is that if your left foot is forward, then keep it that way. Make sure your right foot is back and they're both parallel. They're not in the 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock position. You want them at the 9 and 3. And it doesn't matter if you're right foot forward or left foot forward, whichever way you're comfortable, just make sure that your feet are level. Ideally, if you're left foot forward, you're trying to slightly turn to the right. And if you're right foot forward, you want to drop in and slightly turn to the left. It doesn't really matter when it comes to a wedge because you're not going to hit your pedals or your sprocket, but it's good practice for when you actually take it to the quarter pipe. So this isn't really an in-depth look at any one of these tricks in particular, but it's going to give you an overview. I'll probably have to do another more thorough one for you guys that are struggling with this, but the main concept is, again, the confidence, make sure your feet are level, and then once you practice on the wedge, the last drop-in I did on the wedge, I kind of like bunny hopped into it. That gives you a good premise for how you're going to do it when you jump into a quarter pipe. Initially, you're going to want to roll in sideways. That's the best bet. It seems a little scary, but it's not. Straightforward, it's a terrible idea. Let's say you hit your sprocket and you go over the bars if you do it wrong. If you're doing it sideways, the worst that's going to happen is you might turn the handlebars and wash out in either direction. So it's not the end of the world. Essentially, confidence, a little bit of speed, and you just kind of like roll in. I showed you 3 different ways you can do it. You can kind of just like lift your front tire and gradually drop it into the transition. You kind of like slightly turn. And the very important thing there is to make sure you lean with it. If you're left foot forward and you're dropping in clockwise or to the right, you want to make sure it's slightly lean to the right. You don't want to like have your weight up on the deck or to the left where you're going to fall into the transition. So you want to like kind of get comfortable with that. If you're having a little bit of difficulty, you can always put your pegs on. And I showed you just by doing a double peg, but you can literally just drop your bike on the coping and just drop in via double peg. That helps a lot of people. For me, it's always just been more helpful to just get it over with and just kind of like bunny hop in. Now, assuming you dropped in successfully, you're in the middle of the skate park now. What do you gotta do? Rely on step 1, use proper etiquette, make sure to look around that you're not gonna run into anybody. The next thing you wanna do is figure out what you wanna jump. So we can either jump the straight bank, the tabletop. Some people call it a box jump. To me, it's a wedge to wedge. Everyone has a little different term to it, but essentially the idea is that there's a ramp, a plateau, another ramp, so you can like kind of hop onto it a couple times, and once you get comfortable, hop up and over it. This is one of the cooler things about the skate park, is that if you find something that's like a bank to bank with a plateau or a flat on the top, then you can kind of like gradually work your way up to clear it. The first thing I did was kind of like do a couple manuals across. Don't worry, if you're not very good at manualing, you really quickly learn, because it's not very far, and you kind of learn how to nudge your way forward or bunny hop into it, or you know, kind of clear the small distance. But it will help you with your manualing skills for later. Once you're getting better at that, then you can kind of like jump and just kind of like tap your back tire. And then you're ready to just kind of like maybe jump onto it once, kind of like flat, just to see what it's like. And once you're comfortable, then all you really have to do is make your way up and over the whole thing. And once you see the embankment that's going down, you want to kind of like nose your front tire down and tuck up your back tire up a little bit so you don't tag or hang up. And that all just takes practice. The more you do it, the more comfortable you get. As you're trying to clear bigger distances, you're going to go a little bit faster. So as you can see, every time I did it, my speed increased gradually. Once I was ready to clear the whole thing and then get some air time, then obviously it took like a full pedal or 1.5 to really get up and over. Now that we've mastered jumping across, the next two things are jumping hips and learning how to carve and how to actually maybe even air out. Those last two steps are a little more advanced, so maybe it's a good time to kind of stop at this video, go practice that, then come rewatch the video, see if your technique is all dialed in, and once you're there, come back and focus on jumping the hip or carving or airing. And the reason for that is that because both jumping out of the quarter pipe, so onto the deck, or airing out, so that means like airing in the transition, coming right back in it, those are a little more advanced, since they're going to require you to hop up and then turn. Maybe get the first lessons dialed in and then come back for these. But if you are ready for this, then here we go. We're going to be jumping a hip first, and the one that I have behind me is perfect. It's a 90-degree wedge to wedge hip, so that means that they're banked on both sides, and all you're doing is really jumping essentially 45 degrees. You're not really turning all that much, but you want to start getting the motion of it. So I recommend learning it on something like this versus something like a hip with like a transition, like a quarter pipe, or with coping, because you can really tag it. So initially, again, if you're left foot forward, you're going to want to turn to the right, so you're going to want to jump this hip clockwise. I'm going to come down from this quarter pipe and just jump kind of like I did the box jump, except I'm going to start trying to turn. And you achieve that by kind of turning your shoulders and using your back foot to push your wheel. For me, in my case, I'm going to be turning to the right slightly, so I'm going to push my wheel clockwise. Much like the box jump, the flat lets you jump onto it a couple times before you're ready to clear the whole thing, so you can work your way up kind of like I did. Then once you're ready, you're going to start just kind of barely turning. You're going to jump and like maybe turn like less than 45 degrees. And as you get more and more comfortable, you can start kicking out a little bit more, making it more dramatic. Then as you get really comfortable, you start picking up the speed, and then you can start really whipping it out. But it's essentially the same thing, kind of like the box jump, where you're gonna basically hop, tuck, then once you see the transition, you're gonna wanna nose dive down and then pick up the back end to suck it up and make you clear. If you're struggling to clear something, it's always a little easier to get a little sideways, because then your bike cuts the corner, so it makes it a little shorter. So if you ever see people get really sideways, that's because they were probably gonna really tag, so that's like the racer in them to save it. Also, I did it to the left and to the right. Again, I'm left foot forward, so I normally turn to the right, but you can also jump it the other way. It's not that big of a deal, but ideally you wanna learn it with your lead foot forward, kind of turning the way, because then it helps you on topside tricks like tail whips and no foot cans and all these other things that you learn with that direction. All right, the last two things we're gonna do are jumping out of the transition, so onto the deck, and then airing out, which you can kind of like learn from carving as well. So I'll show you both those techniques, and that'll wrap up today's video. Like you see, we have a lot of options for quarter pipes, but the best ones for me for learning tricks are the ones that are not too steep and also not too tall, but also not too short, because you want something in the middle. This, I believe, is about a 6-foot quarter pipe with, it looks like the radius of like a 5 foot or maybe a 4.5 foot. So it's not too steep. Coping doesn't bump too much. And what you're gonna be looking for is almost close to the pocket, to where it's not as steep. As you can see over there in the extension part, that's a lot steeper. So that's not so good for airing onto the deck, but it's a lot better for learning air out tricks. So So out of all the things we learned today, this will probably be the more advanced and also the most dangerous. So I should add, at this point, you should probably from the very beginning, you should be wearing a helmet, especially if you're younger than 18. No matter what, accidents can happen. I mean, I've been riding a long time. I know how to get out of it pretty good, but it's still a pretty high chance that I could hit my head. So that's just something I have to deal with. But you guys at home shouldn't do the same, so wear your helmet. Make sure you're comfortable with the idea of going up a 3, 4, 5, or even a 6-foot quarter pipe, and then just kind of gradually figure out the speed. You can do so by just kind of like riding your way up and seeing how much the transition absorbs from your speed. Once you're comfortable with that, then all it is just kind of going fast and having the confidence. Essentially, you're gonna go up the transition kind of like a bunny hop. You're gonna kind of go up. You're gonna be leaning back a little bit, and as you're coming up to the very top, you're gonna want to start pulling up your back end to level it out, and then you're gonna be pushing your front end down, and you're gonna want to try and come down with your back tire slightly before your front before you land. Another thing is, if you're feeling that you're struggling to get up, you're gonna go a little sideways, kind of like kick out of the back end. It'll make it so that you don't too close to the edge and fall back in. That's what you really don't want. You don't want to fall back in because you could fall back and hit your head. So be very wary of that. The last thing we're gonna go over is just the brief introduction to airing out. It's not really how to air super high or on super big quarter pipes, but it's just the concept of essentially carving. And again, I'm left foot forward, so I'll be carving to the right. And you're gonna want to start learning how to carve as high and as close to the coping as you can. And once you're feeling comfortable with that, all you're essentially gonna do is a little baby bunny hop at the very top to try and get your tires up and over the coping. So we learned how to hop out of the transition here onto the deck. Now we're gonna learn how to air on that quarter pipe, which is, this again is maybe like a 7-foot quarter pipe with a steeper radii, as you can see there. So that's gonna launch us into the air better. Again, essentially you're just gonna want to carve at first, and then you're gonna wanna learn how to make sure your front tire bumps first, and then followed by your back tire, and then you try and get up and over the coping, then you kind of like suck it back in to land and roll away. One of the most important things to learning how to air is learning how to carve, and this skate park, Belvedere in East LA, has some of the better corners and transitions that you could be ripping around. So it's good to kind of get familiar with that. So take some laps, get as high to the coping as possible, go pretty fast so you get comfortable with the speed and turning sharply. Obviously be careful because it could get slippery or there could be people in the way, so that again refers to rule 1, etiquette and being courteous. Well, once you get the idea of that, then the next step is to just kind of start carving. And even underneath coping, you start kind of like bunny hopping and learning how to like air very lightly. You're just essentially doing almost like a 90, you're barely even turning. But you have to get comfortable with that, keep doing these little rainbows, and as you get better and more comfortable, you can start getting up and over the coping. And to do that, again, you want to make sure that your front tire hits first, then followed by your back tire, and that'll put you in a good position to dictate where your air goes. And then yeah, the rest is just getting comfortable with it. Obviously wearing protection, helmet, and being comfortable with the skate park and that transition, and ripping it every single day if you can, because nothing is better than repetition over and over. It's better than not, and if you do that a lot, you get your good fundamentals, then you'll be ripping around in no time. All right, I wasn't kidding when I said it's like 90-something degrees, so I'm very hot, very tired, and this was a lot of talking to do for a very short video, but I hope you guys enjoy it at home, and I will be doing more thorough how-tos on any one of these things that you guys want me to. So leave a comment, let me know what I messed up on or missed, or what you need a further explanation, and I'll get to it. There'll be a vlog tomorrow, so tune on in. All right guys, I'm out.